Alright, so we did it. We won Board Game Geek's Geek Madness 2024 competition. So that means that we delivered on our part, and I think Dane Beltrami, our all-time favorite game designer, has also, at least partly, delivered on his part. Because he has tweeted a couple of photos of what some people in the community call scenarios, but I'm not sure it is exactly that. Because for me, when it is a scenario, then you in some way change the end game. But the two photos that he has shown is more like a game variant to me. So we are adding new game mechanics into the game. But the goal of a game is still to score either 10 or 14 points. And he has shown two of them to us. We have the minor factions and the Age of Exploration. And in this video, we'll have a look at each of them. So let's start with the Age of Exploration. And it says, for a moment, silence. Then the probe bounced back a single blip. Something was there, something huge. And this variant adds two new things to the game. The first part is about relics, and it says, relics require only 2 matching fragments be purged instead of 3. And that will of course mean more relics will come into the game. The Nasroga's Alliance, Fabrication, Faction Ability and Black Market Forgery Promissory Note do not require purge fragments to match. But since this ability is the same as Nasroga's Faction Ability that says, either purge 2 of your relic fragments of the same type to gain 1 relic, or purge 1 of your relic fragments to gain 1 command token. So the second part of it has not been changed, but the first part matches this ability up here. And the same goes with the promissory note, purge 2 of your relic fragments of the same type to gain 1 relic. So of course these two needs to be buffed a little bit. So what they have done is that you can still purge 2 relic fragments, they just don't have to be of the same type to gain 1 relic. But that's not it for this game variant, because we also have something about the Dark Energy Tab technology. And it says, all players can perform the following action. You may exhaust Dark Energy Tab and roll 1 die. On a result of 1 to 4, draw a random unused red tile. On a result of 5 to 10, draw a random unused blue tile. Place that tile adjacent to any border system that contains your ships. Place a frontier token in the newly placed system if it does not contain any planets. So now we can all of a sudden expand our already big galaxy here. So let's roll a die and see what we get. That was a 10, so that is a blue tile. And since we have units only in our home system, then as I read it, we can place the new system in one of these 3 locations. Whoops. And since it has a planet on it, we don't place a frontier token. And then of course we need to exhaust Dark Energy Tab. There are just a few things that I'm a little bit in doubt of. One of them is whether you have to decide where to place the system before you roll the die, or can you do it afterwards. I think that can make a big difference, because you can get a red tile instead of one of the blue ones, and then of course that will be more attractive to put closer to the galaxy. And the second part is that whenever we have flown down here and gain control of this planet here, and we are now, let's say, in round 2 or round 3, and we want to do the exact same thing, so we exhaust Dark Energy Tab, roll a die, and then can we now place one more system even further away from all the other players, and in this way hide our planet's resources and influence. Of that I'm not entirely sure. But if this is the case, then I will buy stocks in any furniture fabricators like IKEA, because then we will all need to buy even bigger tables. I really like the idea of getting more relics into the game. I think most often only 1, 2, maybe 3 relics come into the game, unless of course Nasroga is one of the factions being played. But why not use this game mechanic even more now that we already have it? But I can be a little bit in doubt whether it's a good idea to be able to add even more planets, resources and influence to a game, especially if you have a rich galaxy already. Because in my experience, when the galaxy is very rich, then all the players produce tons of ships, and they are just standing still in their slice, protecting the slice from being attacked from the other players. And nobody wants to attack, because if you attack your neighbor on your left side, then you are pretty sure that you will be attacked from the player on your right side. And this way we have just huge fleets standing still in the galaxy doing absolutely nothing. And being able to add even more resources and influence to that Yeah, I'm just a little bit worried that I will just emphasize that. I wouldn't call it a problem, but yeah, but it doesn't really add anything to the game in my opinion. But I haven't tried it yet, so I'm definitely looking forward to try and play with this variant. The second game variant we got is called Minor Factions. Exchequer scoffed. A single section, and they had pledged their support to the Exchequer. How pathetic. And it says, during setup, players are dealt one fewer blue tile. Before creating the galaxy, shuffle the reference cards for factions not being played and deal one to each player. In speaker order, players take turns placing those factions' home systems in the second ring equidistant from players' home systems. Then they place 3 neutral infantry on those planets, split as evenly as possible between them. And then it says, when a player owns each planet in a non-player faction's home system, they take that faction's alliance ability from the deck or from the player that owned it previously. These 3 are the alliances here. And lastly it says, non-player home planets gain all 3 planet traits, cultural, industrial and hazardous. And I think this makes for a really interesting variant of the game, because the equidistance will now be pretty strong, both in resources and influence, but they will also be a lot harder to gain control of with those infantry on them. Of course it will be easier for some factions, like the Embers of Muad, who can bombard with their Warzone. They will have much easier access to gaining control of these planets early in the game. But for other players it will take longer before they can gain control of all the systems in their slice and also the equidistance adjacent to their slices. But I think there is one downside, and that is that a lot of players already think that the equidistance to the left belongs in their slice, and I disagree with that. I think the player who has units on a planet in the equidistant or units in the system has gained control of that system, and until that happens, then it is a neutral system that could belong to any player. But with this variant, and especially with the alliances being available for the player who gains control of that, I think a lot of negotiations and discussions early on in the game could happen, because some of these alliances are more interesting to get than others. But I do think it is a game mechanic, the alliances here, that are not being used often enough, so I think it's pretty good that we can get these abilities even more into play. There's just one thing I'm a little bit in doubt of, and that is we can now explore these planets, but are we allowed to explore them when we gain control of the planet from the neutral player, or do we need the scanning drone network technology before we are allowed to explore these new homeworlds? But this is definitely a game variant I'm looking forward to try out. And feel free to share your thoughts about this game variant in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and I hope I'll see you in the next one.